Haven't done anything on the Riley yet today, but I have been cleaning up a little bit, reorganizing things. I just wanted to get all my tools all in one place because I got sick of walking backwards and forwards to find things. Just shifted around some stuff. This morning I went up the road to the local town where the men's shed was having a garage sale. So I thought, oh, I'll pop along and see what's there. It was very busy. There were a lot of people, but I managed to get some bargains. So the first thing was this little bench grinder for $35. These are pretty cheap anyway, so not a big deal. I wouldn't normally buy Ryobi tools. I've had a lot of issues in the past with some of their angle grinders and things like that, but something like this, it's basically a motor, so there's not a lot to go wrong. I wanted to get a small grinding wheel for grinding up my lathe tools, so that's good for this. I've taken one of the stones off, one of the wheels off, because I want to put a polishing wheel on the other side. Either a polishing wheel or a wire brush. Probably the wire brush. I need to see what I can get that will fit this, because that would also be very handy as well. So I got that, and then the other thing I got that I've just been making space for and just got dropped off is that, which if we turn it that way might make more sense. It's a bandsaw, and this was an absolute bargain. It was $120 and they delivered it for me because I was in the MG and it wasn't going to fit in that. But the reason I want this is because eventually I have to build the body for the Riley, and it all has to be period correct. I want to do it properly, of course, which means a timber frame. And the Austin 7 is a steel frame with aluminium skin, which is pretty straightforward. A timber body is going to be interesting because I'm not really a woodworker, but obviously I was going to need a bandsaw to be able to cut the timber that I need. So I've been on keeping an eye out for one just in case one ever happens to come up, but they're always in the wrong place or just not very good. But this one was up there and it was for sale, and the very nice chap I bought it off is a woodworker. He's upgraded to a bigger bandsaw, and he said $120, so absolute bargain. So I grabbed it. The only thing I need to fix is, as they were moving it, they had an accident with one of the corners, one of the feet, and it's just a bit bent. But that, obviously, being something of an amateur metal worker, that's dead easy to fix. So that's what I'm going to do now, and then I should be able to stand it back up carefully and have a look at it properly. This was the slightly dinged up corner, but it was dead easy to hammer that back to straight. The only casualty is one of these little feet brackets, the little tab's broken off it. I could probably make one of those if I really needed to, but I don't think it really needs it. I even found that I still have a tin of this green hammer finish paint, which is the same stuff that I used when I restored that drill many years ago now. So I'm going to bolt the feet back on, and then I can just touch up the paint where it was a bit damaged. That should be good. Okay. It would be nice to say I've completely stripped down this machine, totally rebuilt it, put it back together better than new, but it wouldn't be true. I brushed it down a bit, vacuumed the sawdust off it, and basically just gave it a really quick clean up and a little bit of oily rag type treatment with the Penetrol. I didn't even bother to paint it in the end. There was barely any damage to it once I'd straightened it out. I have taken all the covers off just to have a look at it, trying to figure out exactly what it is. There's a 3/4 horsepower motor in there, single phase. That's got a date on it of 1991, which probably dates this to the early 90s, I guess. So, although it'd be nice to say it's an ancient machine that was used to build mosquitoes during World War II or something like that. It's not. It's just a nice little straightforward bandsaw. I guess there's not a lot to them really. This bit's all cast. It seems reasonably solid. I have powered it up very quickly. The motor works. I like that these knobs and things aren't plastic. They're just cast metal. So it seems reasonably solid. But I don't really know. I don't know anything about bandsaws. The last time I would have used a bandsaw would have been high school. Long time ago. So I don't really know what else I can say about it. Very straightforward. It is missing the fence, but I can always make something up for that, I guess. I don't know if these are all standard sorts of things or not. Maybe you can buy something. It's got the little blocks next to the blade. It's got quite an aggressive blade on it, I think. But I think it'll do the job. I just need it to be able to cut some framing for the Riley when the time comes. So I'm going to put all this back together. I'll probably have to go look up and see if I can find a manual or something for it. So the brand on it is Jax. I don't know if that means they make them or they just sold them. The only other sort of label I could see on it was this OAV, whatever that means. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to find a user guide for this or not. But it was $120. I mean, you can't really go wrong with that. That's it all back together with all the covers back on. The only thing is really to see if it goes. I just cable tied the power lead well up out of the way. Power switch is down here. Seems to work fine. I'm not going to try and cut anything single-handed. I did just do a quick test before. This is, I think, this might be remove, which the sawdust isn't very good for you, so I didn't cut very much, but seemed to cut okay. So I think all I need to do is actually look up some films online or find some instructions or some manuals about the proper way to use it. But I think that's going to work pretty well. Because today has been mainly cleaning up and then sorting out this bandsaw, the only real Riley thing I got done was putting the grease nipples in the top of the rear axle trunnions. And I also just touched up some of the paint, just the loose nuts and bolts on the back of the front hubs, just so they don't rust. And the only other really tiny job I did was machine down the lock nut on the steering end float adjusting bolt there. It was just a little bit too thick, so I machined it down, turned it into a half nut basically. So I've got more adjustment there now, which is good. After I went in last night, I had a bit of a hunt around to figure out what this bandsaw was, and it turns out it's one of these common Taiwanese type tools where it's a very common model, but it's branded by everyone as something different. So the actual model is a SW1401. I think the 14 means it's got a 14-inch throat. They still make these, apparently. They're slightly more modernized, but basically it's exactly the same. So I found this manual, which explains to me how to adjust everything and how it's all supposed to be set up. So this one here is for the blade tension, and I had that set way too high. So I think it says it needs to be set so with a light pressure on here, the middle of the blade moves about an inch. So far less tight than I would have expected, but that seems to be the way it's meant to be set up. The tracking here. So what you're meant to do is get this to track so that the belt is in the middle of the rubber tyre, and this rubber tyre is crowned, so it has some degree of self-centering to it, but there's an adjustment here. So what this adjustment does is it's affecting the tilt of this top wheel, which affects where the belt runs. Then you come down to the guides. These little blocks are set so they're just clearing the blade, and this bearing at the back, which is there to support the blade when it's being pushed backwards, needs to be set to be fractionally behind the blade. And then there's a similar one on the bottom, so this one goes up under here. And when I looked at this, what I found was this bearing on here had seized up. So I took this all apart, gave it a good clean, took the bearing apart, found that the shield on one side was a bit buckled. So I've actually taken the bearing off, turned it around so that the nice face is here, and after working it backwards and forwards a little bit, it all freed up. I put all this in the little ultrasonic cleaner to clean it up and then re-greased it, and that's now fine. So what I'll do is I'll put that back on here and see if I've got the blade tracking correct. I have it now, so the tracking is all correct. The bearings and all the spacings are correct. It's still fairly noisy, but I've worked out most of the noise actually comes from this side, just with the blade rubbing up the inside of this little plastic safety guide. So without that, it sounds like a bandsaw, but with this in place it sort of rattles a bit, just because it's plasticky, I think. But I'm pretty pleased with how that's come out. Anytime I do any work or adjustments on it, I actually unplug it. I don't like just relying on the switches, so I physically unplug it to make sure there's no danger of it ever turning on. So I'll put it all back together now and see what it sounds like. All back together again. This is what it sounds like now. So whether that's correct or not, I'm not really certain, but I think it's fine. You can definitely hear the blade sort of scraping its way along that little plastic housing though. The only thing I can really add about the Riley this weekend is I have ordered the bearing that goes in the front of the torque tube. I was able to get that locally. I think it was about $25 or something like that. And I've ordered some BSF screws that I need, one to attach the torque tube properly and also for my clutch. And then I should be able to take all of that to get the rotating parts balanced. I do still need to order some more bolts to hold the little back plates on, and I think I'm going to have to get those from the UK, so I should probably get onto that, but that's going to take a few weeks to arrive, I'm sure. I think that's about it for the Riley today.